You could be in bed for like 9 solid hours, wake
Yeah.
up, and biologically speaking, your brain hasn't rested for a single minute.
Yeah, which is wild to think about.
It really is. Welcome to the deep dive. We are so glad you're here with us today because our mission is basically to completely dismantle the idea that simply being unconscious is the exact same thing as recovery.
Right. They're definitely not the same thing.
Exactly. So we've pulled together this massive stack of sources from the OXYZEN Smart Ring ecosystem. We've got clinical blogs, some really dense product analyses, and biometric user testimonials. And we're using all of it to decode the invisible data your body is generating, like every second of the day.
And it is such a critical shift in perspective, For the longest time, the only metric anyone cared about was duration.
Oh, right. Like, I got my 8 hours, I'm good.
Exactly.
Right.
But relying on just duration, or even just how you subjectively feel when you wake up, is a notoriously flawed system. The data we're looking at today proves we finally have the technology to map the actual biological mechanics of rest, down to the millisecond.
And we are going to show you how understanding those mechanics, specifically the architecture of your sleep and your autonomic stress responses, is the absolute ultimate shortcut to optimizing your cognitive output.
It really is.
We're talking about supercharging your creative problem solving, locking in procedural memory, and building what the sources call a readiness-based lifestyle.
Which is such a great concept.
Yeah, it's a philosophy that actually respects your physiological limits instead of, just blindly obeying an outlet calendar.
Right, and to get to that readiness-based lifestyle,
Yeah.
we really have to look under the hood at what these trackers are actually measuring. I mean, most of us understand the basic utility of deep sleep, right? Slow wave sleep.
Right, the physical repair stuff.
Exactly. It's the physical repair phase. It's the time when your body releases human growth hormone to repair tissue and when your brain consolidates declarative memory.
Which is the cold, hard facts, like names, dates, or the steps of a chemical equation.
Yep, exactly.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because if deep sleep is just about logging the facts and repairing the hardware, the sources really emphasize that REM sleep is the engine for everything else. It's a completely different neurological state.
Oh, it is arguably the most fascinating state the human brain enters. What's fascinating here is that REM rapid eye movement sleep isn't a passive resting state at all.
Right.
Internally, your brain activity dramatically accelerates. Your oxygen consumption spikes. Your brain waves look almost identical to a state of high alert wakefulness.
Wow.
Yeah. It's the stage of vivid dreaming, obviously, but from a functional standpoint, it is the absolute cornerstone of procedural memory.
Meaning it's not just remembering the chemical equation, it's learning how to physically execute the lab technique to actually mix those chemicals.
Precisely. Procedural memory involves your actual motor pathways. So during REM, your brain is physically replaying the motor patterns you learned that day at lightning speed.
That's crazy.
It's actively myelinating those neural pathways to make the physical skill automatic. But beyond physical skills, REM is the ultimate arena for creative problem solving. It's what the research calls post-project processing.
I found that concept so incredible because, let's say you just spent a grueling week designing this complex software architecture or, I don't know, writing a massive research paper.
Right.
You've got thousands of disparate data points just floating around in your head. And during REM, your brain basically goes on this violent search for hidden associations between all those disconnected dots.
And it can do that because the prefrontal cortex, which is the logical, rule-abiding part of your brain, is significantly suppressed during REM.
Oh, so the rules are turned off.
Exactly. This allows the brain to make bizarre, hyper-creative connections that your waking, logical mind would just instantly reject. It's literally why you so often wake up with the solution to a problem you were totally stuck on the day before.
It also serves as overnight emotional regulation, right? The sources talk about REM acting as overnight therapy. Like, it literally strips the emotional charge off of difficult memories so you don't just snap at your coworkers the next day.
Yes. The neurochemical environment of REM is entirely unique. During this specific stage of sleep, your brain completely shuts off the release of noradrenaline.
Which is a stress molecule.
A key stress molecule, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So your brain processes the stressful memories from the day in a completely neurochemically calm environment. You retain the memory of the event, but you shed that visceral emotional panic associated with it.
You keep the lesson, you lose the trauma.
Exactly. Beautifully put.
I think of the whole sleep architecture sort of like this. Deep sleep is like hitting save on a massive Word document. You secure the raw data.
Right.
But REM sleep is like upgrading your brain's entire operating system overnight so that the next day You intuitively understand how to use the software and creatively link all those files together without crashing the system.
That is a perfect analogy.
Oh.
And the challenge, historically, has been detecting that OS upgrade without hooking someone up to a full EEG in a sleep lab.
Which nobody's doing at home.
No, exactly.
Hmm.
So what the advanced algorithms in these smart rings do is detect the physiological proxies of REM.
Okay.
They map the sudden spikes in heart rate variability, the erratic respiratory rates, and the localized drops in skin temperature that consistently correlate with that specific brainwave activity.
Wow.
And the data tells a pretty brutal story. Getting 8 hours of fragmented sleep, where your REM cycles are constantly interrupted, destroys your cognitive output far more than getting 6 hours of architecturally sound, continuous sleep.
Which brings us to the hardware. Because to optimize this, you need pristine data. And the sources highlight this massive debate in the wearable tech space regarding how we actually collect that data. It's the tracker wars.
Oh, yeah?
Smartwatches on the wrist versus smart rings on the finger.
Right, let's look at the physiology of where the sensor actually sits. A smartwatch relies on the wrist. But the wrist is a highly complex, noisy environment for a sensor.
How so?
Well, you have thick layers of shifting skin, you've got dense tendons, bone, and a relatively deep vascular structure. Plus, your arm is subject to immense motion artifact during the night.
Right, you roll over, your arm gets trapped under a pillow, the watch shifts around.
Exactly. It's a total construction zone for an optical sensor. But the finger.
Yeah, what about the finger?
The finger is a physiological superhighway. Specifically, the palmar digital arteries sit incredibly close to the surface of the skin. There are no major tendons blocking the view, and the finger moves significantly less independently of the hand.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, this allows the ring's optical sensors to capture a radically cleaner PPG signal.
The photoplethysmogram.
You got it, which maps the microscopic changes in blood volume with every single heartbeat.
Okay, so cleaner signal, better data. But there's this logistical gap that the sources point out, which seems almost more important than the sensor placement, honestly. The battery life.
Yeah.
Because the battery dictates the continuity of the data. Most high-end smartwatches tap out after, 18 to 36 hours?
Yeah, usually.
So naturally, people take them off to charge them at night.
Creating a massive blind spot in the very data we just established is the most critical for cognitive recovery.
Right.
Rings operate on a set-and-forget model, usually lasting 5 to 7 days. That continuous 24/7 data stream is literally the only way an algorithm can accurately establish your unique physiological baseline. And without a baseline, the data is just random noise.
Okay, wait. I want to push back on this digital minimalism aspect for a second, because smartwatches are basically the gold standard for staying productive and fit, right?
Sure.
They have screens, you can check emails, dictate texts, set timers. Why would you want to give up that centralized command center on your wrist just for slightly better sleep data?
That's a fair question, but we really have to evaluate the attention economy and the actual physiological cost of context switching. A smartwatch is fundamentally designed to pull your attention outward.
Okay.
It creates what we call a vibration trap. Even if you don't look at the screen, every time your wrist buzzes with a notification, your brain is forced to process an external stimulus.
Oh, it's a micro-interruption.
Exactly. And the research in the sources shows these constant micro-interruptions completely obliterate your flow state.
Wow.
If you are a student engaged in deep study or a professional coding a complex architecture, it takes an average of 23 minutes to fully regain deep focus after a single interruption.
23 minutes from one buzz.
From one buzz.
Huh?
A smartwatch actively fragments your attention. A smart ring, on the other hand, is a silent biometric guardian. No screens, no haptics. A watch manages the external noise, but a ring optimizes the internal system required to navigate that noise.
That internal system is fascinating because the same optical sensor tracking your REM at night is doing something entirely different during the day. It's reading the ultimate barometer for hidden stress, which is heart rate variability, or HRV.
HRV is arguably the most powerful biomarker we have for measuring the real-time state of the autonomic nervous system.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Let's get specific here because people often confuse this with just having a low resting heart rate.
Right, they are very different.
HRV measures the microscopic variations in time between consecutive heartbeats. So if your heart is beating at 60 beats per minute, it is not beating exactly once every second.
Right. There might be 0.9 seconds between 2 beats and then 1.1 seconds between the next.
Okay.
That variation is driven by a constant tug of war at the sinoatrial node of your heart. Your sympathetic nervous system, the fight-or-flight pathway, is pushing the accelerator, telling the heart to speed up.
And the other side.
Simultaneously, The parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest pathway, which is heavily regulated by the vagus nerve, is tapping the brakes.
Okay, this raises an important question, and it's totally counterintuitive for a lot of people.
Okay.
Why is high variability a good thing? Like, if you have a perfectly healthy cardiovascular system, shouldn't your heart beat with the exact steady rhythm of a metronome?
That is the metronome fallacy.
Yeah.
We associate mechanical precision with health. But human physiology is an adaptive system. It's not a simple machine.
Okay.
A rigid metronome-like heartbeat, meaning very low HRV, actually indicates that the parasympathetic braking system is offline. Your nervous system is inflexible, overwhelmed, and locked in a state of sympathetic dominance. It's lost its ability to microadjust to the environment.
So the system is basically floored on the gas pedal, even if you are just sitting calmly in a chair.
Exactly. And the sources show how rapidly this shifts. A sudden psychological stressor, like an angry email from your boss, can trigger a cortisol surge that plunges your HRV by up to 30% in mere minutes.
Just from an email?
Just from an email. Outward calm does not equal true physiological relaxation. You can be sitting at your desk smiling, but your HRV reveals your central nervous system is in full-blown crisis mode.
And the long-term consequences of living in that crisis mode are terrifying. The clinical blogs call it allostatic overload.
Yeah.
It's the point where your body's compensatory mechanisms just buckle under the chronic stress. You get immune suppression, metabolic disruption. The stat that really jumped out at me was that consistently low HRV is linked to a 40% increase in all-cause mortality.
It's huge because it's an integrated measure of system failure. But it's not just a predictor of long-term disease, it's also a real-time warning system for physical injury.
Oh, right. There's that perfect case study of this in the user testimonials. A power lifter goes to the gym and hits a massive deadlift personal record.
Right.
They lifted the heaviest weight of their life. They felt subjectively super strong, but their ring recorded their waking HRV that morning at just 18 milliseconds.
Which is a highly critical data point. Because 20 milliseconds is generally considered a hard threshold for severe systemic fatigue.
Why 20 milliseconds specifically? Like, what is physically happening in the body at 18 meets that makes it so dangerous?
Below 20 milliseconds, the parasympathetic nervous system is essentially non-functional. The body is running purely on sympathetic drive.
Okay.
In the context of a heavy deadlift, it means your central nervous system, the electrical grid that actually controls your muscles, is completely fried.
So the muscles might work, but the grid is down.
Exactly. The peripheral muscles might have the raw contractile force to lift the weight, but the CNS cannot effectively coordinate those tiny, stabilizing micro-movements required to protect your spine.
Wow. So that high performance was actually masking impending disaster. The system warned them to deload because pushing through a sub-20 HRV drastically increases the risk of a major musculoskeletal tear.
Right.
Connective tissues are vulnerable, and the body's warning signals are just blunted.
It separates blindly pushing your limits from intelligently expanding them. The algorithm gives you permission to rest when your subjective toughness might otherwise push you straight into a severe injury.
So what does this all mean for daily life? Like, once you have this highly accurate REMM data and this real-time HRV data, what do you actually do with it?
That is the million-dollar question.
Right. This is where the deep dive gets incredibly actionable. The sources are absolutely packed with micro-interventions. I like to think of them as biological cheat codes.
I like that.
Yeah. Tiny inputs that yield disproportionately massive upgrades to your daily energy.
Having the data is step one. Step two is active manipulation. If we connect this to the bigger picture, let's look at the hydration hack. It perfectly illustrates how a tiny physical change alters the whole nervous system.
It seems almost too simple. Drink water, lower stress. But the mechanics behind it are fascinating.
When you are even mildly dehydrated, your blood plasma volume drops. Your blood literally becomes thicker, more viscous. So to maintain the same cardiac output, basically to get oxygen to your brain, your heart has to pump much harder.
Wow.
This increased workload instantly triggers sympathetic overdrive. Your body literally perceives the thick blood as a survival threat.
But the intervention is shockingly fast. The biometric data from the sources shows that drinking just 16 ounces of water can boost your HRV by roughly 6 milliseconds within just 10 minutes.
That's incredible.
You restore the blood volume, the heart doesn't have to work as hard, and the vagal brake re-engages.
A purely mechanical fix to a systemic stress response. Now,
Sure.
contrast that with the gratitude hack, which leverages neurochemistry instead of fluid dynamics.
Man, this one sounded like pure self-help woo-woo until I read the clinical breakdown.
Oh, completely.
Taking just a 5-second window to intentionally reflect on something you are grateful for causes a measurable 4-millisecond jump in HRV. 5 seconds.
Yep.
How does a single thought change the electrical rhythm of the heart that quickly?
So intentional gratitude specifically stimulates the ventral vagal complex in the brainstem. When you actively generate a feeling of safety and appreciation, the vagus nerve immediately releases a neurotransmitter called acetylcholine directly onto the sinoatrial node of the heart.
The pacemaker.
Exactly. And acetylcholine instantly slows the heart rate and introduces that healthy variability.
So it's a chemical release triggered by a psychological state?
Yes.
Yeah.
And what is incredible is that for beginners, this 5-second gratitude practice actually outpaces traditional meditation in producing immediate HRV benefits.
Wait, really? Better than meditation?
For immediate, fast results in beginners, yes.
No.
Meditation is incredibly powerful, but it can take weeks of practice to reliably alter vagal tone. Gratitude works almost instantly to physically rewire those stress response pathways via acetylcholine.
That is a massive cheat code. Okay, now let's talk about the ultimate stressor. Travel. Jet lag absolutely crushes the nervous system. The sources show that crossing multiple time zones can suppress your HRV for up to a full 7 days. Your circadian rhythm just gets entirely decoupled from the local environment.
Yeah, the body is in a state of prolonged physiological confusion.
Mm.
Melatonin is releasing at noon, cortisol is spiking at midnight. It's a mess.
But there is an exact protocol to violently reset that rhythm. To accelerate recovery, the data shows you need exactly 1 hour of bright, direct sunlight combined with a 20-minute brisk walk immediately upon arrival at your destination.
It's all about combining environmental cues. The bright sunlight hits the melanopsin receptors in your retina, right? That sends a direct neural signal to the suprachiasmatic nucleus, which is the brain's master clock, telling it that it is officially daytime.
Okay.
Simultaneously, the brisk walk raises your core body temperature and spikes cortisol in a healthy way, which aligns your metabolic clock with the light clock. It halts that prolonged HRV suppression almost entirely.
We see these protocols coming to life in the user testimonials, too.
Right.
The stories are fantastic because they move beyond the theory. Take Daniel K.
Ah, yeah, Daniel.
He was this avid biohacker, but he couldn't figure out why his mornings were so consistently rough. He used his Ring's breakdown of his sleep architecture to realize that his afternoon coffee was specifically obliterating his REM cycles.
Because caffeine has a quarter life of up to 12 hours. Even if you fall asleep fine, the caffeine is still blocking the specific adenosine receptors required to drop into the deepest stages of REM.
Ah.
So he was getting the duration, but completely missing the architecture. By cutting caffeine earlier, he restored his REM, and his cognitive fog vanished.
Or Jane D., who used her sleep score to finally understand her specific chronotype. She realized she was forcing herself to sleep during a window when her core body temperature was too high, which led to terrible recovery.
Yep.
She shifted her sleep window by just an hour to align with her biological temperature minimum, and finally felt human again.
What Daniel and Jane are doing is the ultimate goal here. They are moving away from a calendar-based life and adopting a true readiness-based lifestyle.
You stop letting external obligations dictate your energy expenditure, and you start letting your internal biology dictate your schedule.
Exactly. If you wake up and your readiness score is low, say under 50, or an HRV well below your baseline, you don't force a grueling workout, and you don't schedule a tense negotiation.
Right, you dial it back.
You actively prioritize restorative tasks. You hydrate, you utilize the gratitude protocols, you focus on administrative work, you protect the system.
But if your score is high, like 75 plus, your HRD is resilient, and your IREM was optimized.
Then you attack. You tackle your most intense cognitive challenges. You architect that software. You brainstorm that massive project. You align your highest effort with your peak physiological capacity.
Let's take a step back and look at the whole landscape we've mapped out today. We started by moving completely past the outdated metric of total hours slept to really uncover the profound biological mechanics of sleep architecture. We explored how REM sleep acts as this neurochemical operating system, upgrade myelinating procedural memory, and stripping the emotional charge off of stress to fuel our creative problem solving.
And we examined the hardware required to actually capture that data, comparing the noisy, attention-fragmenting environment of wrist-based smartwatches with the continuous, high-fidelity optical sensors of finger-based smart rings.
We decoded HRV, revealing the tug-of-war at the sinoatrial node as the ultimate compass for our daily energy management, proving that a rigid metronome heart is actually a stressed heart.
Right.
And finally, we armed you with the exact biological cheat codes, the blood volume shift of hydration, the acetylcholine release of gratitude, and the circadian reset of sunlight to actively manipulate that data and reclaim your energy.
The most vital takeaway here is that this data shouldn't be another source of anxiety. It shouldn't trigger orthosomnia, which is that obsession with perfect sleep numbers.
Oh yeah, that just creates more stress.
Exactly. It is simply a mirror reflecting your internal state, allowing you to reclaim your cognitive focus and respect your biological limits, instead of constantly fighting them.
And that brings us to a final thought, something for you to mull over as you navigate the rest of your day. We've seen how this invisible data can reveal the absolute truth about our physiological state long before we consciously feel it.
Mhm.
So, if a tiny wearable sensor on your finger can map your vagal tone and accurately predict that you're burning out or getting sick days before your conscious brain actually registers the symptoms, at what point do you stop trusting your own gut feeling and start trusting the algorithm on your finger? Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time.